I was lucky to be selected for one of the advanced parties. And so the 12th of December, around about that time, I was selected to go out with about 10 and 12 other guys to Saudi Arabia, which is where we landed. And I remember it because it was 2-3 foot of snow when we left in Detmold. We drove to Ramstein Air Force Base and we got on a Galaxy plane, flew to Madrid, not sure why, and then we flew from there to Al Jubail and then landed. I think it was 25-30 degrees at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was 2 foot of snow to that weather, and I'd never experienced that type of heat before. I've been to Spain and so on, but never been to that type of the heat that you'd experienced in the middle of the Gulf. So it was an interesting start to that tour. In January, they started the bombardment of the air war, if I remember, middle of January, which lasted about a month, and then we obviously followed the routes that we had to do when the ground war started, and that was really a very strange experience of coming across a battlefield and and all the things that you can imagine that you would see across that. And but for me, I think that that was part of an excitement, to part of being, I suppose, part of history at that time. In the end, we came down through the top of Iraq, above Kuwait, and then down the Basra Road, down back into Kuwait itself. All in all, I think we were there for probably, I think, till March in the end, I think it was. So for me, December to March was when our unit had stayed there as long as it possibly could. You prepare yourself mentally that there is an element of something. And I remember one officer saying at one point, make sure you wrote your letter, because I guarantee you someone in this room isn't going to make it. Luckily, that wasn't the case, but you still have to prepare yourself for that sort of eventuality. An interesting point was we were told to bug out, get in our vehicles and ready to move. And this was part of the ground war at the time. I believe we had an Apache squadron attached to us as well at that particular time. And it was pitch black. I can't remember if the fires had been lit by the Iraqis at the time, but it was pitch black at night. You couldn't see, just had the convoy light in front of you. And then suddenly you just heard all this rumbling of MLRSs and howitzers all firing on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, all going up into the sky. And it was obviously going somewhere in the distance. And there was a sense of excitement at that point. And then another sense of, well, maybe they're going to fire back at the locations that are just firing at them. So there was just a brief sense that, you could, come across that, but it never really happened. We didn't really get any fire coming back to us at that particular point. And as we were driving through the berms the next day, you could see obviously the burned out tanks and the fatalities and so on that happened during that, and that was a theme that we saw moving forward. Being with the Army Air Corps, obviously, helicopters, Gazelles and Lynx at the time, and I mean now it's obviously Apache gunships, but in those days it was the Lynx and the Gazelle. And I did manage to go up on one of the last missions that were going on, just to go inside one of the helicopters in a Lynx, but we landed at a forward operating base, and then there was an announcement, obviously, that there'd been a surrender at that particular time. And I remember a load of tankies coming past. Not sure, they were Scots Guards or someone like that, but they did have a big Scottish flag, Union Jack flags, and everyone was, it felt like VED. You guys probably saw more of the war than we did because of it was almost centrally televised quite a lot, so we could only see what was around us. And I saw a Scud missile hit by a Patriot battery in the middle of the night. Obviously saw a lot of the conflict, as I said earlier. But I think at that time we had to have injections as well, anthrax injections or some form of injections to protect us. And I remember that there were some people that were objecting to have some of these vaccines because they didn't know what was in them. And I think everyone had to take the first injection, but it was voluntary for the second one, if I remember. So obviously you had the injection, few people were violently ill after the first one, so they didn't have the second one at the time. For me, I didn't have an issue, so I took the second one, and then I became violently ill. And I just remembered completely just going dizzy, collapsed, vomited everywhere, and I was out cold for about 17, 18 hours and couldn't wake up. And we'd moved a couple of locations from them, and it was I suppose that was quite scary at the time. But I remember distinctly those the injections that we had.